Feast Customizer settings for the FSCI blocks, which are the category image blocks, are found in the same place. So we'll go to Customize under Feast, FSCI, and you have basically the same options as the FSRI block that we covered in that tutorial. Now, you're going to want to treat these a little bit different typically because there's fewer of them and they're laid out a little bit different. You can add some more spacing. You can have the categories stand out since typically they're shorter than the actual post titles. So we'll go through this one more time. The listing item padding is again the internal listing in between here. So if we set this to high, you're just going to shrink this down. You can adjust it as much as you want if you want more space or less space in between these, but we'll leave that as is for the most part. Title font, same thing. You can set it to either the heading font, which on this site looks very similar as the body font. But if you have Feast Plus, for example, or somewhere else you've set the heading, you'll be able to set this. The title color, again, we don't need to match the actual brand color. We can set it to just regular black. What we will probably want to do though is increase the font size on this a little bit. The default is the same as the body font size, but we can bump this up to say 26 pixels to make it a little bit bigger. But probably where you're going to get the most bang for your buck is adding the font weight. So setting it to something that's bold so that it stands out is probably going to be the best way to get these to stand out. Title padding, this would be the top and the bottom padding on it. We can maybe make this stand out a little bit more than typical. So if we have say a 15 pixel, that separates it a little bit, that makes it a little bit better. Title case, again, the default is how it's written in the category title, but you can set it to display all uppercase, which in this case matches the headings for the site, so this doesn't look bad. Again, lowercase is also an option. This is what the Cook Pro tends to use, but uppercase in this case actually looks good. FSCI grid gap, so again, we got the horizontal, which is the gap in between each of these items. They are pretty close together, so it wouldn't be bad to add some more spacing to it. That's 20, let's set it to 30. So it's a little bit more spacing between them. We'll try 40. 40 doesn't look bad. Maybe it's a little bit too much. But the same as the FSRI block, we want to double check on mobile how this is going to look because the default setup is too wide, right? So we can see here that there's too much spacing here and too much spacing here. So I definitely would go back down to a 30 grid gap to give it a little more space, maybe even a 20. That looks good on mobile. Again, the 800 is maybe a little bit much. Let's see if we can shrink that down to 700. Same thing with the font size, maybe pull that down a little bit. We do want to try to avoid having this break as a line here, so we might even need to go smaller than that. Some of you will have categories that have a big line like this. Let's try keep on going down in the font weight. Still not what we're looking for. The title padding may be an issue here, so if we shrink this down, there we go. So the title padding was kind of adding a little bit too much spacing and forcing it to wrap onto two lines. And see if we can bump the font weight up a little bit. We can, but we'll have to make some adjustments. So this is how you kind of play with it and balance it out again. I would try especially on mobile to get this looking good. That will be your restriction here. The vertical grid gap, which is the gap between here, looks good. I'm not seeing any problem with that. Unfortunately, with the way that words break, you're not going to have any control over. So if it is going to break, it's going to break. The fix of this might be to do gluten space free. It might break a little bit better here, but we can also change the horizontal grid gap. So if we reduce the amount of size between here, let's try 16 pixels, you might get a better result, you might not. So it's just worth playing around on, and make sure you're using the mobile view instead of the larger view. And again, this is a little bit more pronounced than it was otherwise, but there's at least some options here to play with.